welcome to the Wings Over New Zealand show. I'm your host, Dave Homewood. And today I have something quite different. I've got most of the team from the Vintage Aviation Echo magazine. Hi, guys.
Hi, Dave.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Dave.
We're coming to you via Zoom. All you guys are in Britain, in England. And you have revolutionized the magazine world for aviation with this new magazine, the Vintage Aviation Echo. Um, and it's just an astounding magazine. So I really wanted to get you guys on and have a chat about it. But I want to just introduce you all first. So um, I'll go around and get a bit of background in a minute. But first, I'll introduce you all. We've got Elliot Marsh, we've got Greg Marsh, we've got Harry Measures, Oliver Stevenson, and Huw Hopkins. Elliot, you're the editor in chief, aren't you?
That's correct, yeah.
Can you give me a bit of background of how you've got to this point? Your background in aviation, please.
Absolutely, yeah. I was kind of born into a family that loved aviation, and so air shows and trips to air museums and the like were the norm for every weekend as a child growing up. That then sort of led into, as I got into my teens and early 20s, writing for and then editing the Global Aviation Resource website for several years.
Yep.
Did that up until 2016, and then Huw, Greg, Harry, and I decided to branch off and found our own exclusively historic aviation themed website, which we did in April 2017 when we launched the Vintage Aviation Echo. We really found our feet over the next few years and worked pretty quickly with some of the prominent names in the aviation industry, like John Romain, Guy Black, Richard Grace, Steve Hinton Jr., and really just built a profile and a reputation within the industry. And you know yourself how important it is to build trust with people. And that was really our goal for those first few years was, garner these contacts, build relationships, and produce what we hoped people would think was excellent online content. We took a hiatus in 2022 when I met my now wife and spent a couple of years building a family life. And then at the very start of 2024, decided that I wanted to make a return to the Echo. I'd always been thinking about ways that we could do that, as I didn't really want to come back just doing the same thing within digital publishing. And I'd always had it in mind that it would make an excellent print publication. So we began toying with the idea of a magazine, and very quickly, quite literally over the course of a few days, we went from saying, well, we could have a best of volume of articles that have been published online and we could put them into print, to thinking, actually, you know what, if we're going to do this, we need to do it properly. We need to really invest in it and come up with something that will firstly endure and stand the test of time. And secondly, something that will stand out from all of the other aviation magazines that you can buy on the shelves. Because, in the UK, we're lucky to have a pretty vibrant selection of magazines, including a couple, airplane and fly past focusing on historic aviation. We were very keen to not just be another one of them. I think It's important to have your own MO. And that really has been what's kind of led us to developing the Echo as you see it today. And we saw how big an opening there was and an appetite for something new. The idea really was to give historic aviation a bit of a sheen, a depth of polish that I think the mainstream magazines, by their very nature, because they're monthly periodicals, they can't really have. So we opted to go with an approach with a biennial publication, which would give us time to really to curate a selection of articles that, on subjects that we were interested in, and approach it in that way. So to not feel the pressure of having to punch a magazine out every month and fill news pages and that sort of thing. We looked for inspiration from the high-end automobile magazines, and they sort of pride themselves on these beautiful and memorable designs. And we wanted to take that concept and couple it with sort of excellent in-depth copy across this selection of articles, and really give the words and the images a space to breathe in a way that I think because of the format of the magazine, you're not going to be able to see in your mainstream publications. And that was a very exciting concept. And I think once we settled on that as an MO, being a high-end preservation journal for historic aviation aficionados, we were off to the races. I certainly have heard many times over the years that print's dead, and particularly print within aviation publishing is dead. And I just can't prescribe to that mantra. I think there'll always be a place for quality publications that embrace all of the benefits and the sort of exclusive feel that good print can give you. So that's really kind of where I came into this and how it started off.
Fantastic. Now, Huw, talk about your background. How did you come to this?
Yeah, so sort of similar to Elliot and Greg in a way, in that I started going to air shows at a reasonably young age, not quite as young as them. And that included Duxford and Old Warden. I don't live too far from them, so that was great to get into the historic aviation scene that way.
Yeah.
And then as I grew up and into my sort of teen years, it's actually when I came to know Elliot and Greg, and then latterly Harry, and since then now Oliver. And like Elliot said, we sort of went to the Global Aviation resource first, and did a few years there before branching out to the Echo. But we've always shared a very similar sort of view of historic aviation and the preservation side of things, and really wanting to shine a light on that and showcase all the great stories that are being played out at the air shows and within the scene. So yeah, it was kind of just kindred spirits, I guess, coming together and having very similar ideas and wanting to go in the same direction. And that's how we've all come together.
Okay. And I guess, Greg, that's much the same for you, being Elliot's brother. You would have grown up with the same sort of thing as Elliot.
Yes, that's right, Dave. It was obviously pretty much near identical in terms of our interest. We've both been very close, and as Elliot said, grown up going to air shows with our parents and grandparents, and then obviously more recently, together and meeting friends, like you and Harry and now Ollie, and having a nice group of people, and then obviously getting involved in the writing side of things with the Global Aviation Resource site, and then before we moved on to launching the VAE. I'm just an enthusiast in all of this. So it's been a huge privilege, I think, to have got to this particular point with the launch of the magazine. But it's a team effort, and huge thanks to the others for all of the work that they've put into it. Obviously, I'm not that dissimilar to Elliot in terms of what of background.
Right.
But I think it's been fantastic that with Elliot, seeing what's happened and the relationships he's been able to forge with people who we've grown up watching display. People like John Remain and others. Had been pretty it's been very very enjoyable, I think, as Elliot said, I think it's all about a level of trust, I think, we in terms of working with operators.
Yes. And Harry, how about you? What's your background?
It's sort of a bit different to everyone else's, I think, because I sort of fell into the aviation photography more by accident. My dad's always had an interest in air shows, and I got dragged to the occasional one.
Yeah.
But I got an opportunity at school to study photography in my free periods, and sort of quite enjoyed it, and was bothering a local photographer who specialised in horses for some summer work, and he got so irritated by my incessant messaging, he got me a job at Duxford. So yeah, and that was with Classic Wings, who I can't thank Stuart, especially Stuart Etheridge at Classic Wings, because he sort of put a lot of faith in me, and really sort of nurtured a lot of the sort of, I guess, more air to air stuff. as well as and then being at Duxford, I kind of built this relationship with the Fighter Collection and the guys there, and Jane at Flying Legends. And again, that's a tremendous opportunity really for me to develop my photographic sort of skill and style. And of course, being at Duxford, you happen to run into people that are there quite frequently, such as Elliot and Huw and the rest of our kind of tribe.
Yeah.
And it's just been tremendous to be able to work with people who have a genuine passion for telling stories in a good way, and to be able to illustrate those, with some really great imagery. So yeah, that's kind of a quick overview of how I ended up doing this. So yeah.
Well, I mean, that's one thing is with the magazine and also the website that came before it. The images, the photography is just incredible, and I think that's really set it above a lot of other publications. And people who follow, as you mentioned, Flying Legends, all the photographs that promote the Flying Legends Air Show, they're your photos, aren't they?
Well, I don't want to take the entire credit.
Yeah.
Some of them are mine. The last air show in 2023 at Church Fenton, there was a pretty strong team behind them, or behind us. This is the thing I've enjoyed about the magazine. It's being able to spotlight some imagery and photographers that perhaps wouldn't get into the more usual mainstream publications. We've got a bit more of a free rein to illustrate in a different way. So yeah.
Right. And of course, the other member of the team we've got here is Ollie Stevenson. Now, Ollie, you're the artist. How did you get into this?
Yeah, I grew up going to Duxford and going to air shows and enjoying the history of everything.
Yeah.
And I think it was kind of natural that led to an interest in photography while being at Duxford and around the aeroplanes. So going through that and then kind of getting more creative with photography and through Instagram and meeting great people through it, and really nurturing me, and then kind of led onto more creative side, like with graphics, which is what my main job is with a magazine, creating graphics, which we did quite a few of in volume 1. I think it was just sort of a natural progression from the photography that it kind of came to me to do the graphic side of things. It's just another kind of creative outlet because I also paint, and I think it's just having different creative outlets for the same passion, and trying to do each one.
You very casually said, "I also paint." Your artwork is outstanding. It's just incredible art.
Thank you very much.
I love it. I really love it. And you're only a teenager, aren't you?
Yeah, I just turned 20 last month,
okay.
so I'm still a bit of a baby, but
no, it's incredible. It's incredible. So one of the things that I wanted to ask about is the website, which, like the magazine, it really caught everybody's imagination and was a real buzz when the articles started coming out. Was that simply a hobby, Elliot? Did you make money off that website, or was it work, or was it because I just couldn't really see any revenue stream from it?
Being brutally honest, Dave, that you didn't see any revenue streams because there were no revenue streams. It was very much one of those passion projects that you throw yourself into, and it ends up taking a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I mean, ultimately a lot of money to keep it going. We didn't publish frequently. But if you kind of look back at the catalogue of articles that we ran on the website over the last, from 2017 to 2022, particularly the sort of larger features, and that's interviews with big names and kind of illustrated by the likes of John Gibbs and photographers like that. Mm-hmm. All of those guys, I think it's worth saying, everyone was paid, although it wasn't a commercial endeavor. It was very important to me that we treated it as such on the back end.
Yep.
so that was that. Yeah, it was always a bit of a balancing act to manage the Echo around my day job and around social life and family life, and I think um, it was getting to a point where doing that with no sort of return was becoming quite difficult to sustain, because we were pushing to work more with people like Dibs and other photographers, some photographers in the US, for example, and that it's kind of doing all of that out of pocket without any commercial basis does restrict you.
Yes.
That's not why we set up the magazine in the way that we have, but I think it is a factor there. The magazine allows us to comfortably work with a lot of the people who we want to foster relationships with on the photography side. Aside from the guys on the team, I mean, I think it's worth just pointing out. In Oliver's case, he was someone who a few years ago I was following on Instagram and saw his photography and saw the graphics that he was producing, just for himself. And he was kind of on the hit list when we came to put the magazine together of people who I really wanted to work with. There were a couple of others. There's Phil Chaplin, a photographer for the Imperial War Museum and the Shuttleworth collection. Some of his photographs illustrate the de Havilland Comet article that's in there. He was another talent who hasn't really been seen in any of the other magazines, and who I was very, very keen to develop a relationship with. Thankfully, Ollie then came on board and has produced the wonderful graphics that I think it's fair to say are a massive part in setting us apart from other publications. I mean, yes. Ollie's work on Volume 1 has been absolutely fantastic, and what we're doing for Volume 2 is really, really exciting.
Oh, that's fantastic. Another feature of both the website and now the magazine is you tell a really full story. The articles are extremely lengthy, and I mean that's something I love myself, because that's one thing I realized when I started doing podcasts is in print you're restricted to whatever the word count is that the magazine or newspaper dictates, or if it's radio or TV, you've only got a certain amount of airtime. But with a podcast, if you've got a good story, just let it be told, and no matter how long it is. And I think that shows through with your articles, is that you tell the full story. You don't just cut it down for length, and that must take an extraordinary amount of extra work, I'd imagine, to tell the whole story, but the effort's worth it.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it's something that when we set up the website, we weren't at that point. That wasn't really what we were shooting for. We've kind of developed our style quite quickly between sort of 2017 and 18, and I then really got into enjoying doing these longer form articles and not being constrained by word counts. But the problem is, obviously, if you're viewing that online, whether it's on your phone, a tablet, or a computer, I think there's a natural limit to how much you want to read on your devices. And that's why I think the translation of these longer articles to print, I think, is kind of putting them into the medium that they really were intended to be seen in. I mean, the 109E article on Eberhard Thiessen's machine, Red 12, which is really the sort of landmark article in Volume 1. Yep. That is about 12,500 words, and it's sort of told over 3 chapters. And I think the print format really allows you to do that and to, to run, I don't want to say the full story, but, a really detailed, in-depth look with plenty of contributions from different people. And to give these stories a space to breathe. I've never been one for sort of constraining these stories within 1,500 words or 2,000 words. That's a bit of a nightmare for me. I like the artistic freedom of being able to go off and do something long, but also then find the challenge of making it engaging and not just having 10,000 words that kind of lose the reader. It does have to be, it has to have a narrative, and it has to be engaging throughout. And I think that is the constant sort of challenge, and the constant thing that I'm striving towards with those longer articles is to keep people engaged and to not lose the reader along the way.
No, absolutely, and I think you managed to do that perfectly well. You write engaging articles, all of you guys. So, um, and in fact, in the volume 1, which it's been out a couple of months now, I guess. One of the articles is actually written by Nick Gray himself, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We were very lucky when we were running the website to have a good relationship with Nick. He was very supportive of the Echo throughout its time online, and when we were gearing up for Volume 1, being a big fan of Nick's style of writing, it was a real honor for him to agree to write something on EP120, and that was based on it was sort of a comment in an email to me years ago, actually, when we were discussing another piece that went on the website, and he mentioned EP120 being sort of his one true love or something to that effect, and that's sort of what led into the article, and it's something that we want to continue. Nick's penned something for Volume 2, and I think it's his style, very much like his father, is kind of uniquely lyrical, and I'd like to keep that relationship going and to include Nick where we can on writing about his experiences flying TFC's aircraft, because he has such a distinctive voice.
Right, right. I should explain for our New Zealand listeners and others who don't know who Nick Gray is. He is son of Stephen Gray, and they are, of course, the fighter collection at Duxford. Um, very, very awesome collection of aircraft and awesome pilots. Um, so how has this first volume been? Um, what's the feedback been, and has it caused a storm for you guys?
For me, it's certainly, yeah. I mean, you go into something like this and you hope you hope it's going to be received well and that people are going to like what you do. But there's always that doubt, or at least there is with me. And I certainly, when we started shipping out copies to people, there was, I'm not going to say sleepless nights, but there was a real worry as to how it would be received. And the feedback, I'm delighted to say, has been universally excellent. I mean, we couldn't be happier with the reception that it's received, from the enthusiasts, but also from the people within the industry. When you've got articles like that are interviews with pilots and that kind of, are an insight into their world, they're really the guys who you want to do right by. And it's been great to hear feedback from a lot of the pilots, a lot of the guys at Duxford, for example, and the engineering teams, and just to hear that people kind of feel like we're doing the right thing. And I think that's really helped influence. It has actually helped influence how we're approaching Volume 2 and the subsequent editions. The feedback we've received definitely gets folded into that. The human element is something that people really enjoy, and they enjoy seeing it photographically and hearing about these different perspectives. And I think including some of the engineers in the articles is something that we're doing in Volume 2 and beyond, to really to give those guys their dues. But certainly from my perspective, couldn't be happier. And I'll hand over to one of the other guys to kind of chip in on that. But I think it's fair to say that as a team, we've been delighted by the reception.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I can only really echo what Elliot said there. Putting this together was at the time quite all-consuming, really. We've sort of gone from doing an online publication to figuring out how to make a magazine, and just that, putting that in front of people once we got the first proofs really was a bit nerve-wracking. And as Elliot said, the initial sort of reaction we got from the guys at Duxford was great. And I remember I turned up to Duxford to get some pictures of the P40 cockpit and had one of the proofs there. And it is slightly nervous because all the engineers, they live and breathe this, and they have no qualms about saying if something is rubbish. And They were all incredibly impressed with the initial proof that I had to show them. And a lot of people were they're like, we knew you were doing a magazine, but we didn't quite expect this. And it it was a lovely moment to sort of savor really and just sort of enjoy that your hard work and the effort is you are doing something good and going in the right direction. So it's been incredibly inspiring and has got me eager to jump straight back in and get on with volume two. Really, it's great.
Fantastic. But I mean, my first impression, I ordered a copy through, and I will say we are so lucky here in New Zealand that Fighter Flights are your agent in New Zealand, so it cuts the cost down a little bit for us. And I ordered a copy through Graham Frew, who sent me it, and when it arrived, I was absolutely stunned at how heavy the magazine is. I mean, that's a chunk of a magazine. It's almost a book. And then, of course, looking through it, the quality is stunning. The print quality, the photographic quality, all the graphics, it's fantastic. The writing quality is fantastic. But something that really did catch my eye is those really expensive magazines of this sort of caliber that like you mentioned, you look at the high end of automobile magazines, that sort of thing. They're normally like half full of adverts. This isn't. There's not like advert, then a page of writing, then advert, then a page of writing, like all of those high end magazines. It's all one big chunk of actual warbird writing, which is incredible. It really is.
And that's something that we were very keen to avoid, the idea of having blocks of the magazine dedicated to ads.
Yeah.
It's something that fundamentally we need to do. And I think there's a way of incorporating adverts where it actually complements the copy and the editorial rather than offering a distraction to the reader. We were very selective in the the companies that we approached to advertise.
Yep.
And we were delighted with the reception that we received from the ones who we did approach and who have signed on. It's great to sort of see companies like Barnstormers and Eagles 11 and Aerial Collective all really throwing in and sort of believing in the vision that we had. I mean, you've got to bear in mind, we were approaching advertisers before we actually had a physical magazine.
Yeah.
They bought into a concept in the same way that the people who pre-ordered the magazine kind of between April and July were doing exactly the same, just on a different scale. So, we're really grateful to those advertisers for really helping to get us off the ground. And I think the ethos of having advertising that kind of corresponds with the audience that you're looking to cultivate and also the style as well. We want high quality looking ads to be a feature of the magazine and for it to not sort of feel like a distraction as you flick through. And I think we've achieved that with volume one. And 100%. I'm sure that as we go through subsequent volumes, there's the possibility that we may add more advertising, but it will be subtly done, and it certainly won't get to a point where it becomes intrusive.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, it's so unobtrusive in the volume one, it's almost unnoticeable. And I think you've taken a really interesting and brilliant stance on that. Just going through the topics, just for anybody who hasn't seen the magazine, you just run through the topics that you're covered in volume one and give them an idea of what they'll see if they buy a copy.
Yeah, sure. So we've the marquee leading feature is it's a three-parter, all under one roof, on the restoration the rebuild of Eberhard Thiessen's Bf 109E. So that includes significantly interviews with kind of all of the key personalities involved with it, which, given they're sort of these elusive figures in historic aviation, is something I'm pretty proud of. And we've got comment from the owner, from Craig Charleston, who project managed the restoration in the UK, with Dirk Bender in Germany, who is based out of Bonn Hanglar, and he was responsible for overhauling the DB601 engine. There's comments from Airframe Assemblies on building the fuselage, and then input from the guys who built the propeller and so on. So there's a real cross section of really detailed insight into the rebuild of that aircraft, topped off by what I think is a really fabulous interview with Charlie Brown, who did the testing. And I had a great meeting with Charlie back in February. The very first actually interview for Volume 1 was with Charlie, and he just brings so much personality to his articles, and we were very, very lucky to then be able to expand on that with with a full kind of raft of interviewees on the restoration side. Aside from that, there's a career profile with John Romain. Some of you may remember that published on the website. This is an updated version with new comment from John and with new imagery as well. We have a feature on the Fighter Collection's Curtis Hawk restorations, which features Matt Nightingale and Steve Hinton's insight into the restoration of those aircraft, followed by a From the Cockpit account from Pete Kinsey on flying the P-40C, all illustrated there with some amazing John Dibbs photographs, coupled with our own in-house material, largely from Harry, which all sits beautifully together. There's an article that Huw wrote with Seb Mazzuchetti on his beautiful Spartan Executive. There's a Mikhail Carlson feature on the Blériot 11, which is a really in-depth view of kind of how to fly the Blériot. And aside from that, we've also got the Nick Gray article that you mentioned, which is on EP 120. And then significantly, we were toying with kind of how to kind of cap off Volume 1, and it made sense to me to repurpose an article that I had put into the website, which was an interview with Richard Grace on restoring and flying the Connie Edwards Bouchons. Obviously, we didn't know at the time that Richard was severely ill, and obviously passed away recently. And I think that that article and the memories of several really fun interviews with Richard, and so insightful. That's something that I'll certainly I won't forget anytime soon. And I think it stands as a nice tribute to him to have included that. Such a unique voice in aviation, Richard, and such a significant figure. Yes. And I think it's fair to say, just as a team, we extend our condolences to the Grace family and all at Sywell and Duxford, and we'll all miss Richard.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a significant person, and will be a massive loss to the warbird industry worldwide. He was known around the world for what he was doing, and such a shame.
It is. I mean, there's sort of a sad parallel actually with one of the other articles in the magazine. I mean, Richard was only 40 when he died, and the same can be said of Mark Hanna. And we've got, as the closing feature in Volume 1, the first part of the 5-part Mark Hanna series that we published on the website in 2021, I think it was. Again, with new photographic material and laid out beautifully, and that will continue to run as as I say, as a 5-parter across the subsequent volumes. Seeing that in print is fantastic, and I in all honesty, I think it was always my intention to put that into print somehow, whether it was as a one-off kind of volume or its own sort of book, but. Yeah, to see it in the Echo is really wonderful, as that was a real labour of love, and the Hannas was such a big influence on me, to the extent that I think it's fair to say I wouldn't be doing this and wouldn't be having this conversation with you if it wasn't for Ray and Mark Hanna and the excellence that they brought to historic aviation.
Absolutely. They were such amazing ambassadors, even here in New Zealand. They were household names, not just in the warbird community. Like, everybody knew who Ray Hanna was here in New Zealand. I mean, I don't know how that even sort of happened, but if you mention Ray Hanna to somebody who's not involved in going to air shows or anything, they know who he is. It's really interesting.
Quite incredible, yeah.
Yeah, just an amazing Kiwi, and he certainly really sort of defined warbirds for that long period at that sort of 70s through to the early 2000s. He was a great man, and same with Mark as well. Um, one of the articles you didn't mention was the de Havilland Comet. That's another excellent piece in the magazine.
Yeah, it's that was again, that was something I'd interviewed John Michel Munn back in 2021 with the intention of putting it on the website, and obviously that never came to be, and was delighted to see it make it to print. And I think my kind of vision going into that was that it would look like a sort of high-end automobile magazine article on an aviation subject. And actually key to that, aside from the wonderful photography, is really Oliver and his graphics. And I think it's, you know, without him kind of bringing those concepts to life, I think that article in particular, but the magazine as a whole, would be far worse off. I mean, Ollie was pretty wonderful. We sort of started firing ideas around about the Comet page, and I kind of gave him a very sort of slightly garbled brief on this idea that I had, and he just went away and put together this wonderful graphic with the registration in, which is a sort of splash page for that article.
Yeah,
and that's really been the case with Ollie across the magazine. You know, we're indebted to him for his ability to take our sometimes slightly mad concepts and to turn them into something that that works and looks good.
That. Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
Yeah, so yeah, with that article, obviously, because it was the Comet is it's a racing aeroplane, isn't it? So
yeah,
my inspirations for those graphics came from automobile magazines talking about like all those such great racing graphics spreads with, you know, like old cars and all the lines and bright bold colors, and it's just such a perfect aeroplane to have that layout with it. And yeah, no, I was really, really proud of those ones. I think it was the first I did, and yeah, really proud of those.
Fantastic. It really looks stunning, absolutely stunning. The layout
Very
of it.
much.
I think that you guys could have an extra revenue stream if you sell some of those as posters, some of those graphics. That would be something
Yeah,
that I'm sure that.
yeah, we were looking into that. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool.
Yeah, we've had quite a few people who've asked specifically about the Comet splash page.
Yeah.
Something to explore with Shuttleworth for sure, because I think there's a clear interest there, and it is quite unlike anything that I've seen in an aviation magazine before, and you know, ditto some of the other graphics that Ollie's come up with. And I think what's really exciting is seeing how some of the Volume 2 and beyond designs are coming together is really quite something, and I'm very excited to see kind of how that unfolds. And I don't want to say that we're aiming to top what we did with Volume 1, but I think, you know, Volume 2, the expectations are high. I mean, you want it to be The Empire Strikes Back rather than The Last Jedi, but you know, I'm not really feeling that pressure just yet, but it's kind of at the back of my mind that, you know, we need to kind of go big on the next one and really cement what we can do as a team.
Fantastic. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to the next one. It's going to be, you know, definitely something that I'll be getting. So, you mentioned, Harry, that you might have a bit of a preview for us. Do you want to talk about that?
I can indeed. So one of the, I think I'll sort of speak for Elliot here. One of ours, and especially Elliot's favourite articles that we published online back in those days, was the piece on the Foxmoth, which was done with Mark Miller. And I think this is a great example of something that is better, or will be better, hopefully in print, than it will be on the website. So I have spent some time, you know, we've spent some time laying it out, and we actually did another photo shoot with Mark earlier in the year. So he's unfortunately been sort of kicked out of Duxford with his Rapide and had to find some new hangarage, and he's moved the Rapide from Duxford into this beautiful private airstrip in sort of rural Suffolk, and the Foxmoth was there earlier in the year. So Ollie and I, we sort of ventured down into the depths of Suffolk and this airfield is just stunning. It's beautiful, and couldn't be better photographically. So we've got a whole new photo set that we've sort of pieced into the article along with some of the existing material that we had of it. So I'll sort of stop waffling a little bit. Hopefully.
And that article, I'll just chip in while Harry's getting his graphics together. But
Yep.
It's on Bruce Brody's Fox Moth, which is a rebuild of the remnants of one of the Kiwi moths that flew passengers around around New Zealand back in the 30s, and was really a kind of pioneering aircraft flown by some real kind of prominent names in New Zealand aviation history, guys like Bert Mercer, back at really kind of opening up the sort of desolate New Zealand countryside before roads and railways were able to do so. Right. So there would be a real interest for New Zealand readers there, I think, and we've gone to great lengths to research kind of what that aircraft did back in the 1930s and to trace out some of those extraordinary flights, real kind of pioneering stuff, taking people across the mountain ranges and into these kind of makeshift airstrips that the locals have built. I mean, it's an incredible story, and Mark Miller's insight into it is, I talk about people having a unique voice. Mark is one of those who has a very distinctive voice in aviation, and yeah, we had a fantastic interview, and I'm delighted that Harry and Ollie have been able to furnish it with what is quite an incredible photo set. I mean, Ollie was lucky enough to actually fly inside it, so we have air-to-airs. We've got a full ground set of Mark preparing it and flying it, but we've also got Ollie's photographs from inside the aircraft as well, where it's really bring that whole cabin moth era to life.
Oh, superb. Absolutely superb. I did get to see this moth earlier this year when I was at Shuttleworth. I saw it sitting in the parked up area of visiting aircraft during the Shuttleworth Festival of Flight. And I kind of wished I could have jumped the fence and gone at a closer look, because it's such a stunning looking fox moth. So I've always wondered how it's got the original ZK registration on it, which is New Zealand. How does it fly is it on the British register, or is it on our register?
No, it is on the British register. A lot of work went into it with the British CAA, and the article actually covers that in some detail. And that was between Bruce and Mark, and really some of the guys at the CAA in making that happen, because it's not something the CAA tend to allow. Obviously, with ex-military aircraft, it's a different story, but for civilian aircraft, you tend to need to see the G-Reg. And it's a wonderful concession that they've allowed, because I think that fairly significant touch really brings that aircraft to life. I mean, I think the story of what those guys did in New Zealand, and then the particular story of how this one was, rebuilt to such an amazing standard, and it really is an immaculate aircraft. That I think is something that belongs in print, and I think seeing the photographs laid out, it's a pretty awesome set. So I'm very excited for people to see that, and particularly our New Zealand audience, because I think it's one that really deserves to be known in full.
Absolutely. These photos that are coming up on screen at the moment, if you're watching the YouTube version, oh God, they're gorgeous. They're such a nice set of photos. Well done, guys.
Thank you. Wow. And it's fantastic to be able to furnish an article like this with such a broad photo set. These are shot over. Oh, I should probably keep that up, shouldn't I? Several shoots which I've been lucky enough to do with Mark and to involve Ollie as well. It's been fantastic, and it is just beautiful to be able to tell, to accompany the story with this. I mean, one of my particular favourites is this page, and it's just such a sort of personal study of Mark. He is a fastidious person. He's the first thing he did when he rolled it out the hangar was polish it. He's going to have photos done. So the Brasso comes out, and
Right.
it's just this attention to detail and watching him work, and Ollie's study in black and white there on the right is great, and it's a take on aviation photography, which is unusual. I think as a team here, we love it, and it's great to be able to put that in front of more people, because I can't see images like this in the more mainstream magazines.
No.
So that's why I love this, and I'm excited to be able to show this to you now. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the preview. It's fantastic to get this little exclusive of the next volume. When will that come out? What month are you looking at?
So we're working on it actively at the moment, and we because it's biannual, we were sort of looking at around 6 months from the launch date, which puts us in at March 2025. It's in all likelihood it will be March to May next year. There's a rationale for launching in tandem with the start of the air show season in the UK.
Yep.
So it may well be that we sort of send out pre-orders in maybe mid-April, followed by a launch early in May, probably at Old Warden. But yeah, I mean, we'll be announcing more information kind of as we get closer to that in the new year. But in the meantime, we're going to remain fairly tight-lipped about what's going in it, because there's some really exciting stuff, and we want people to be as surprised and excited as we are at some of these things coming together.
Absolutely brilliant. You mentioned the airshow season next year. What I've been very lucky in the last 2 years to spend time in England in your summer, and attend a few air shows. I got to Flying Legends up at Church Fenton in Yorkshire, and I have been to 2 Shuttleworth shows now, and Sywell this year, which was an incredible air show. And I was lucky enough to meet most of you guys. Actually, I also went to that horrible bloody rainy air show. What was that last year?
The Royal International Air Force Show. That's when we met for the first time.
It is, yeah. When we met in person for the first time, and it was just the wettest day I've ever had in my life.
Can I just point out for those listening, it was objectively one of the wettest days you could imagine. Rained all day, and Dave was still there in shorts.
Yes, that was a really bad choice. I thought, hey, I'm going to an air show and it's summer. I'll put shorts on.
Ever the optimist. Welcome to British air shows.
It was absolutely freezing too. So, but I mean, compared to the New Zealand scene, and we have a good, we did have a good scene. A lot of the air show performers are starting to head overseas at the moment, but no, we've got a great air show scene here, but it's so different in Britain, and you guys have got such variety there. I just wanted to talk to all of you guys about your impressions of the air show scene in Britain. There's some amazing aircraft, particularly the Warbirds on the scene there. What are the highlights from just this year that you guys have had, and what are you looking forward to next year? Huw, maybe.
Yeah, we're very lucky here in the UK and sort of in this part of Europe, and the historic scene is so rich and diverse, and there's so many different types of aircraft flying now that weren't flying necessarily 20, 30 years ago, which we've covered before, things like the Blenheim.
Yeah.
But that's what we really like to showcase with the Echo. It's the stories that are within the preservation scene. We are a preservation journal, and highlighting the people that make these things happen. That's kind of what we love to do. And I mean, at the moment, there's the Tempest is coming through. It's made a few flights over the course of this year, but it hasn't debuted yet. We'll get that at some point, hopefully next year. Things like the historic aircraft collections, Hawker Fury and DH9 are back on the scene and flying regularly again. I mean, they are both unique aircraft. flying in the world. So it's very special to be able to see them, and we will be covering them in future in the Echo in print, because they're just so gorgeous. For me, the Fury is my favorite airplane, and yeah, I mean it's kind of that thing of be the gap in the market that you want to see in the world. So that's what we're kind of doing with the Echo, is being the voice that shines a light on all of these incredible things that are going on, and the work that's happening to get these airplanes in front of people and back in the air.
Yeah, absolutely. What have been your highlights, Harry, this year?
I would say what sticks out for me, there are two things really. Firstly is John Romain flying the Mark 14 RN201 at Shuttleworth in the summer. That aircraft's owned by Aerial Speed Icons and is operated by ARC at Duxford. And he flew just a completely flawless display in that, beautiful aerobatic display. The very end of a show, clear blue sky, which you don't always get at UK air shows. And it really was one of the finest warbird aerobatic sequences I've seen in recent years. I would say that the others probably seeing the Mercury flight kind of in its full fat version at Duxford in September, which was with the Blenheim, the two Lysanders, and the two Gladiators, which hadn't happened for various reasons. Owing to sort of unserviceability of TFC's Gladiator when ARC's Lysander first flew in 2019. So seeing that all come together after years of thinking, God, that would be an amazing display to see. That was really quite something. I mean, I think what's interesting to me is, I grew up, and Greg will be the same as well. We grew up in the sort of the 1990s air shows where you had guys like, the Hannahs, the Greys, Huw Proudfoot, people like that, who, quite clearly there's been a change in regulations and a change in the style that aircraft are flown in. And in a lot of respects, quite rightly so. These aircraft aren't getting any younger. And I think seeing them sort of displayed elegantly, rather than the sort of the high performance thrashing that some of them got in the 1990s, there obviously is a difference there. I think what's interesting to me is, as the displays have become not less dynamic, but less impactful, perhaps because of those the regulatory changes, you kind of come to appreciate things in a different way. You appreciate the elegance of a display, the lines being flown, the technical sort of finesse of it. And I think for me, that's really translated into an interest in the people and the technology and the combination of those things, and how that combination works within the airshow environment. How those combinations of I know those stories of people in aircraft over the years kind of weave themselves into this wonderful tapestry. And I mentioned the Mercury flight. You only have to look at someone like John Romain and his associations with the Blenheim and the Lysander and the Mercury engine over the years to really see this amazing story that's kind of played out over several decades and has really been a kind of formative thing for the Romain family. So that's kind of how my interest has changed. And I think I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you can lament the loss of the flying style that people like the Hannahs brought, and everyone would love to see aircraft thrown around at 30 feet and high speed and as they used to be. But I think you have to kind of roll with the times as they change. And I think what we have now is still in the UK is still worlds ahead of the vast majority of other countries in the world. And I think we need to be grateful for that, really, that we still have an airshow scene to enjoy, and that there are still people like John Romain and others who throw their life and soul and their resources into keeping these aircraft flying.
I totally agree there. And, a lot of the stuff that I was seeing while in the UK is so unique. At Shuttleworth, you've got aircraft flying low and going under the ribbon that's held up, doing the limbo, I think they call it. I mean, I don't think you'd get to see that here in New Zealand now. I think they used to do it in the old days, but that kind of flying at an air show where there's people standing on either side of the runway holding up a pole with a ribbon between it, it just smacks of danger um, to the
Well, it is all
to the
relative.
health.
It's interesting to say that you
Oh
wouldn't
yeah,
see that in New Zealand. I think having been to some air shows in the US, I think it interests me when you see people kind of lamenting the loss of the sort of quote unquote exciting flying in the UK, because actually if you go to most US air shows, aircraft are flying racetrack patterns and it's all far more sedate than it is here and in New Zealand as well. You guys have got some fantastic pilots out there who really know how to display aircraft well.
Yep.
And I think it's all too easy to sort of put the rose tinted specs on and lament what we had rather than appreciating what we can still enjoy.
Oh, absolutely. No, totally agree there. So
I
Harry,
think one.
sorry, Greg.
Sorry, Dave. No. I think one good thing now is that there's been quite a big influx of new and younger talent, especially in the warbird scene. Possibly, I think I might be right in saying that there's probably more Spitfire pilots in the UK now than there ever has been, probably since the aircraft was in active service.
Yes.
And that's probably a lot due to the what we call the SSAC flights over here, the passenger orientated flights, that you can do at Biggin Hill, Sywell, Duxford, and elsewhere. And that seems to be very prolific. And I think that's helped keeping up pilots' currency as well, and also said cultivating newer pilots who have the necessary skills to fly, even if they're not displaying the aircraft, they're still building up hours through those particular sorties.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think as Elliot said, times sort of change. We still have some very good air shows in the UK, and I think obviously Shuttleworth is still an absolutely magical place, and that's the one show to go to in this country where you can see aircraft flying closer than elsewhere because of the exemptions that have in place since a lot of the other regulations changed about a decade or so ago. But yeah, as I'm sure you know now, obviously now that I think my favourite period, sort of favourite week of the year, was that Sywell Shuttleworth Festival flight. To the week, having those on the consecutive weekends was pretty special, wasn't it?
It sure was. Yeah, they were both amazing air shows, and they complemented each other by being so different as well. Incredible. I'm so glad that I actually got over there this year to see those two shows. Harry, how about you? What have your highlights been this year?
I'd sort of echo the Sywell 2024 show. I thought the sort of opening sort of 15-20 minute set piece was just fantastic, especially, and it was great to see Mikhail Carlson with his World War One aeroplanes over here. I was sort of lucky in catching him at the last Harmbider in 2019, and that was the first time I'd seen him display actually. So I was delighted that he brought his aeroplanes over, and as Elliot touched on as well, John Romain in RN201 at Shuttleworth was just magical. It was absolutely incredible, that display. And I think it's the sort of like pilot plane place sort of hat trick that everyone wanted to see, and it absolutely did not disappoint. And also to just echo another of Elliot's comments, I think the sort of what makes what I feel grateful for in the UK warbird scene in particular is the skill of the pilots. There are a lot of pilots who fly these warbirds so fantastically for the crowds. It really is a pleasure to be able to watch them. Like John Romain and Pete Kinsey, to name but a couple, have absolutely honed the craft over years. And it is, compared to, as Elliot said, in the US, the racetrack patterns, it's brilliant to see the aeroplanes and hear them. But it really is a whole different ball game here in the UK, and I just think we're so lucky to be able to enjoy what we do, rose tinted spectacles or not, really. So yeah.
No, I agree, and it's also quite special for the UK that you're so close to Europe. So this year you had the pair of fighters from France. You had the the Red Bull guys come over. Is it Austria they live at? I think, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, so that sort of thing. I mean, we just don't get that here in New Zealand. It costs an absolute fortune to just bring one aircraft over because it has to come by ship. So you know that doesn't happen very often, and the fact that they can just jump in their plane and fly over to Britain and do an air show and fly home is, you know, that's another great factor for the UK. Oliver, what have
Yeah.
your highlights been?
I think probably the main one was the tour of the A26 across Europe during the summer and its extended stay. That was
Yep.
really special, and being able to get up close to that, especially I think it was in June. Yeah, that was really really cool to see. And the Sywell Air Show, it was just absolutely brilliant with some of the flying with I think my highlight from that was Rolf Cameron Smith in the Thunderbolt, just absolutely going for it in it. That was really really special to see, and to have a new air show as well on the scene was really good, and the vibe around it was really really nice. So I'd probably say them two as the highlights from this year. Yeah.
Brilliant. That, you know, one of the things that stands out for me from that Sywell show was the 727 that snuck over the bloody hedge and terrified everybody with a shock because you just didn't know it was coming. That was incredible.
Yeah, it was great. It was great to have such a variety of airplanes there as well. Of
Mm,
course, we had there's a 727, which yeah took everyone by surprise, and
yeah.
then the Lightning to start with the Mustang and Thunderbolt, that was really cool as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And something else that really impressed me at the Shuttleworth Festival of Flight was seeing the Eurofighter Typhoon. I just had no idea that they could do what they do because I'd never seen one before. And that thing just looked like uh it was like watching a little aerobatics plane sort of thing. You know, it was like the nimble qualities that has. And I guess you guys see them all the time and just don't really think about it. But I was just blown away that a fairly big jet fighter could do that sort of stuff in a small space, if you know what I mean. So yeah, that was amazing. There's such a variety at these air shows, and they're not all warbirds of, you know, 1940s. It's quite cool.
Yeah, I think also the French Air Force Rafale is well worth checking out. You know, it's a fairly regular visitor to the UK. You know, you'll probably see it at least once a year or so.
Okay.
Somewhere in this country. But yeah, I think for my money, and I know a lot of people feel this way, that it's probably one of the best fast jet displays in the world, certainly in Europe. Yeah, it's just outstanding, and it's always been consistently good. So yeah, I think he visited Duxford back in June. So yeah, if you know, it's obviously, you know, there's some fantastic shows out in France. That if anyone listening, if you've never been to places like Melun or the Ferté-Halle, you know, they come, you know, highly recommended. And yeah, chances are you'll probably see the Rafale solo display out there. Obviously, you know, there's an excellent variety of fast jet displays. But yeah, I think the Rafale takes the top prize for me.
Fantastic. Just one last question. Your magazine not only covers the stuff that's currently flying, but you know, you talk about the restorations as well. And what is which aircraft currently in restoration that you're going to see in the future are you most looking forward to, each of you?
It's not obviously technically in restoration, but the Tempest is probably not. I
Right.
think a lot of people are extremely excited to see.
Fantastic. Yeah,
I'm going to weigh in with the BF 109F that's under restoration at Sywell.
Okay.
That's Graham Peacock's aircraft and is you know, progressing at the moment. Not sure when that is likely to fly, but when it does, it'll be the first F model to fly in private hands. And it's interesting. You talk to a lot of guys who've flown 109s kind of in the modern era, people like Charlie Brown, and they are all gagging to get their hands on it because the F, in his words, the F was the sexy one. It was, you know, lighter than the G model, but had a more powerful engine than the E. And I think performance-wise, is really kind of up there as equivalent to, I guess, a Mark V Spitfire. So that's something I'm really looking forward to seeing as a fan of German aircraft. I'd love to see the 109E in Germany. You know, Eberhard Thiessen's one as well. Whether that will do air shows is yet to be seen. But yeah, would love to actually see that in the flesh, and even better to see it displayed by someone like Charlie Brown.
Fantastic. Huw, what are you looking
for me?
for?
I think for me, also due out of the air leasing stable at some point in the next few years, the Spitfire Mark 12.
Yeah.
The first Griffin variant. Now, I actually prefer the earlier marks of Spitfire. So the Mark 1, I think they're so pure and so, as RJ Mitchell had envisaged, they don't have the added radiator, the added guns, and the other amendments that came throughout its service as the marks went on.
Yeah. But
for me, the 12 actually, it's a really clean, small Griffin fighter with the clip wings, and it's the ticket for me. That
fantastic. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing one of those fly too. It'd be amazing. Ollie, how about you?
I think mine is probably the Focke-Wulf 189 being done at Arco at the moment. I'm not sure on the customer, but I think that would be pretty cool. I imagine it's one's not flown since the war, and it's a pretty unique aeroplane. So I think that would be pretty cool to see flying.
Excellent. Yeah, that would be. And Harry?
I'm going to echo Greg's sentiments with the Tempest. Really, I just think it's what a brute. It's massive aeroplane with a massive propeller on the front. I'm just looking forward to seeing that fly and display.
Awesome. And not one of you mentioned the Mosquito that's been built for Britain.
Remiss for us not to have. I think I think it goes without saying we're all excited to see a Mosquito. I mean, you guys in New Zealand have been well and truly spoilt with them, and the guys in the US are now. So it's time to share some of that love with with the Brits.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been very lucky to see them fly here when they are doing the test flying, and we've had a couple of displays. I mean, at Wanaka this year with the latest example, that was just phenomenal to see that flying. And you guys are going to absolutely love seeing one flying around the UK. I'm absolutely sure of it. And AvSpecs and Mosquito Aircraft Restorations do an amazing job on their restorations. So, yeah,
with the Mosquito, it's one of those types that I will only believe that it's coming and is going to fly here when I see it, because it's one of those types that it's so bucket list. It's so high up the list for me. Yeah. I grew up, and as I speak to you now, I am about 2 miles from the de Havilland Museum at Salisbury Hall here in Hertfordshire, which is where the Mosquito made its first flight from.
Yep.
And where they now have 3 static preserved examples all under one roof. So I grew up going there. So for me, it's really one of those star items that I'd love to see one day, and fingers crossed it comes off, because that would really be something.
It sure will.
I think Eddie and I were lucky enough to see the British Aerospace Mosquito back in the 90s when we were younger. But obviously, that's approaching 30 years ago now since it very sadly crashed. So, for us, it will feel like practically a new aircraft type to savour. But very exciting times, I think, for that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover while we're talking?
I don't think there's anything sort of to cover per se, but I would like to just extend a thank you to anyone who has bought the magazine, yourself included, Dave, and to anyone who will off the back of this. People throw around the expression labour of love a lot, and it sounds like a real cliche, but for all of the guys here, and for Hazel as well, Hazel Haynes, who is our designer, who really, without her, we wouldn't have a magazine. It's fair to say she was able to bring our designs to life and to put it into a format that that was able to go to print. And across the board, everyone has thrown in so much time to this. It became a daily thing. We were all working on it day in, day out for a few months, and it's so heartening to see the reception to it. And I think it really has fulfilled our goal of putting a bead on historic aviation in a totally fresh way. The guys have talked to kind of the importance of a different photographic style, and allowing a different type of photography the opportunity to be enjoyed within historic aviation. And I think stepping back from as editor and looking at it kind of without the subjective glasses on, I think it is something pretty special, and I think it has, I would hope, a very bright future, and we're very excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, well, so am I.
Yeah,
so am I.
just to follow on from Elliot there. Yeah, with all the positive feedback that we've had from Volume 1, which we were all really blown away with, it just really gives us the confidence to go forwards into the future volumes, and to really hone our craft with it, and just to continue to try and push ourselves and get new content that is really in-depth and intriguing, as well as the photographic style of the magazine and the pieces. And it like I say, it's just given us the confidence to really push on now, and we're well into planning Volume 2, and even further ahead than that we're planning as well. So hopefully there's a lot more to come.
Absolutely brilliant. So tell the listeners who haven't bought a copy yet, where can they buy a copy of the Vintage Aviation Echo?
Absolutely. So you can order directly through the Vintage Aviation Echo website, which you can reach by vintageaviationecho.com or through vaemag.com. Both will lead you to the same place, and you can order a copy online there. They retail at £18 British, and they will be shipped to you very soon after you order. Alternatively, you can buy, as you mentioned, Dave, if you're in New Zealand or Australia, you can buy through fighter flights directly. If you're in the UK, there are a few other retail outlets that you'll be able to pick them up from. Aviation Bookshop, for example, Aerial Collective stock them for their customers, and we have them in a few air museums as well. So it's we're not far off selling out the run of Volume 1. So okay. If you are interested, I don't want it to sound like a hard sales pitch, but speak now or forever hold your peace. And and otherwise we look forward to rolling out Volume 2 in the first sort of quarter of 2025.
Fantastic. I will put the links into the show notes where people can follow to go to your site and to the Fighter Flights page as well. Thank you very much, gents. It's been a pleasure to chat with you guys, and hopefully we might catch up again in person in the future. Maybe I'll meet you all at another air show in Britain sometime.
I can recommend Hahnweide in Germany.
Oh, that would be nice too, yes.
Another tip for the Hahnweide box. Do it, Dave. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Do Melon the weekend before.
Bandwagon.
Oktoberfest with aircraft. You can't go wrong.
This is the kind of peer pressure I like. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
No, thank you.
Saying, Dave,
thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Cheers, Dave.
Yes, thank you, Dave.